Brown, welcome to Partnering Leadership. I am thrilled to have you in this conversation with me.
Thanks for having me. It's great to spend some time with you.
Can't wait to talk about the AI Ultimatum, preparing for a world of intelligent machines and radical transformation. Before we do though, Steve, would love to know a little bit more about you. Whereabouts did you grow up, and how did your upbringing help contribute to who you've become?
I grew up in England, in the UK, and for some of my life, I grew up in a university. So that probably shaped a little bit about who I am. My dad was a college professor, and to earn a bit of extra money, he was also the warden of the hall of residence, so where the students lived. So we lived on campus for many years of my life. So I suppose higher education has always been a part of my life. My dad went on to run a university, Liverpool John Moores University in Liverpool in the UK. And so higher education has always been important to me. Knowledge has always been important to me. And one of the things that really shaped me was I had very early access to computers. Back in 1976, my dad brought a computer home from his physics lab, and I got to
Wow.
play with it. And I knew then that I was smitten, and that I could see then it was going to change the world. I suppose I was a little futurist at the age of 10. And I was just fascinated by the possibilities it presented. And I spent way too much time in my bedroom programming, and I probably made myself ill a few times because the screens were low. They were very early screens. So that probably shaped me the most. And I suppose the other thing that shaped me is because I grew up in the UK, you are right on the doorstep of many other countries. And my parents, we traveled a lot, and we lived in France every summer. We'd go and spend 3 months there. So I got immersed in French school, and I learned to appreciate other cultures and travel. And I now live in a different country. I live in Portland, Oregon, on the west coast of the US. I've been here almost 30 years. And I appreciate diversity and travel and culture. I've set a personal goal for myself, Mahan, which is to always visit more countries than my age. I'm now, I think it's 78 countries, and I try and get at least one or two more every year.
What a beautiful goal, Steve. And I find that travel helps form our thinking, and that cognitive flexibility it gives us is a tremendous advantage. We're going to spend time talking about AI, but I think those layers of insights and the value those experiences bring go beyond just the enjoyment of the travel.
Yeah, it enriches you and you see the diversity of cultures, but I think it also shows you the opposite, which is the commonality we all have. No matter where you are in the world, people care for their children and they have relationships and they love each other. They want the best out of life for their kids and for themselves. And we're all just one big species. And that's the main thing you learn. And then all the differences are just the little frilly bits around the edges.
Now, with this species, we've had different technologies, different tools over the years. We are going through a huge transformation that's going to be focus of our conversation. One of your experiences was at DeepMind at a point when a lot of people might not have been as familiar with DeepMind or artificial intelligence. What got you to join DeepMind, and what was that experience like for you?
They're an amazing company, and I got to be there for a couple of years. It was supposed to be a year assignment. They had a gap in their organization, and I knew that COO there, Lila Ibrahim, and she called me up and said, "Hey, can you help me out? Can you come over and fill a gap in their organization?" Initially, I said no, which was dumb because I thought I've got to take my wife out of her work and we've got to travel across the world, go back to London. And so we decided to do it in the end. And it was an amazing experience. I have been passionate about AI for many years. We were talking about it at Intel in 2015. And one of the reasons I left Intel, I worked at Intel for many years, was because as one of Intel's two futurists, I could see Intel did not have a great future because they were not investing in AI in the ways that they should be. I'd been immersing myself in AI for quite some time. And then when this opportunity came up, I thought, I get to be close to the mothership here for a little bit. I packed up and we went back to London. I got to recharge my British accent a little bit and spend time with some of the greatest AI minds on the planet. And to see the work that they do and how they approach it was eye-opening. Just the level of ambition that they have. We just talked about the human species. They're talking about creating a new alien species which will live alongside us. They want to create human level or beyond super intelligence to support us, to help us do more. And that level of ambition to use AI to solve science, to accelerate scientific discovery, to accelerate medicine, to discover new materials, to expand our ability to solve problems. We face some pretty big problems. Lack of energy, climate change, you name it, there's a big list. And their ambition is solve intelligence, and that solves everything else. And that appealed to me at a very deep level. And so I just got as much out of it as I could while I was there. I loved it. It was great to be surrounded by such good people as well. They're very careful about who they hire. I did 17 interviews to get into
Wow.
the company, two of which were with Demis, the CEO, who I love to bits. And they select people based on, do they have a good heart? Do they look at things the right way? And so it's a company of really profoundly good people whose hearts are in the right place, and they're just trying to do good things for people.
That's good to hear, as they have been and continue to be at the leading edge of AI. You also mentioned having worked closely with Demis Hassabis, who's still a leading force. What did you learn from him and your experience in working with him?
I don't know if I've ever tried to put it into words before. He's a very thoughtful man. He's incredibly bright, probably one of the brightest minds ever to have lived, honestly. I know that sounds a bit much, but I think that's probably true. Chess champion in his age group at the age of 5, and he had to wait a year because he was decided to be too young to go and start doing 2 degrees at Cambridge at the age of 16. He's just one of those people. But he uses his brain to think about things from many different angles. And I think that would be one thing, was that always look holistically at problems. I was taught to think deeply about problems and rigorously at Intel, but that 360 degree, I think I picked up more from Demis. The other thing was a cultural thing. I mean, he helped to shape the culture. He's co-founder of the company along with Shane Legg. And it's rare you go and work for a company where one of their 5 cultural tenets is be kind, kindness. And Demis can be tough, but he has that kind streak in him that shows that hyper collaboration and kindness can get you much further than beating people up and being tough on people, which is the Intel culture that I came.
Now, you call this the intelligence age and compare it to the Industrial Revolution, but faster. Help us understand, what does this intelligence age, this revolution we're going through, mean, and therefore what will be the impact of it?
There are 2 things that define a new industrial era. There's either a new wonder material, and we tend to name the era after that material. Think the Stone Age, the Iron Age, the Bronze Age. One can argue we're now in the Silicon Age. So that's one thing, as the new material. But the other thing that can define a new industrial era is when the cost of a general purpose technology heads down towards 0. So think electricity. It's a general purpose technology. It's being used for this Zoom call that we're on. It's being used to light the room I'm in. It's being used to heat and cool the room. I have an electric car, and so on. General purpose technology. When the cost of a general purpose technology heads down to, doesn't reach, but heads down towards 0. When that happens, it becomes abundant and you start using it to solve lots of other problems. What we're about to see is the cost of powerful, capable, deep intelligence head down towards 0. So you'll be able to scale intelligence and use it to solve many other problems. It's already an amazing partner and a tool for scientists to help them push the boundaries of science and discover new things. But it will also be used to turbocharge everybody in the world of business. It'll be there to amplify the abilities of educators in the educational world. So it's this incredible amplifier for human abilities and capabilities. I talk about agents a lot in my book, and agent's just a smart piece of software that has autonomous capabilities. So at its core, it's got a large language model essentially, but it's got the ability to act in the world and it's got the ability to reason and solve problems. I think there are going to be three types of agents in the world. There'll be ones that we call offload agents, and they're there to do a task that you don't want to do. The things that we find boring or repetitive, booking a meeting room or finding a time when 5 people can all get together or booking a flight. They're all boring, repetitive things. Have an AI do that's offload. What I think the opportunity is, and I think this is to get to your question, what's the impact this is going to have for us all, is the other two types of agents. And agents are like digital people, digital employees in a workplace. These are elevate agents and extend agents. So elevate agents partner with you to elevate your performance, to help you be not just more productive, which is boring, but more creative, have deeper intuition, make higher quality decisions, that sort of thing. And then extend agents that give you capabilities, abilities you didn't have before, so that you become essentially a superhero in your own lifetime. And to me, those types of agents are fascinating. And the potential there is to expand human ability and impact in a very profound way that makes all of our lives better. And that's exciting to me.
It is a very positive potential and view. Part of what I want to understand better, Steve, is that you'd focus on amplification quite a bit and want to circle back to that. However, some of the rollout at this point of agents has been more replacement rather than amplification. A simple example would be call center agents, where instead of a human answering the phone, it's not the agent enabling the human to service the clients better when they call. It's the agent, the AI agent, being able to fully handle the customer service call. So how do you see the potential being in that amplification and augmentation when, in many instances, what is being sold from a financial perspective is the replacement?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think some of that is a lack of imagination. You know, IT for the last 50 years has been used to cut costs, boost productivity and efficiency. And as business leaders, as managers, that's what people are used to using technology to do. How can we cut costs? How can we be more efficient? And you can do that with AI too, but you can also use it to create new value. And that's something I talk about a lot in my book, is finding that balance. And as leaders, people need to understand AI's potential. It's a different beast. And yeah, you can use it the old way. I call it the 20th century way. But if you want to embrace 21st century thinking, that means using AI in both ways, which is to extend capabilities of humans and create new value. And actually, that example that you picked of customer support people, there's a case study in HBR, Harvard Business Review, in 2023, I think it was. It was a large enterprise software company. I know who it is, but I can't say. And they used both elevate and offload with their agents. So the agent would initially, the AI would initially try and answer the person's problem. If they weren't able to, then they would already have understood roughly what area the problem is in and pick the best human that's available right now who has the best expertise in that area. Bring them into the call. The human would take over, solve the person's problem. The AI listens in all the time and is trying to be helpful. So it's listening to the conversation and surfacing potential solutions on the screen in front of the human customer support agent and helping them to be more successful. So you can have these combinations of offload and elevate working side by side if you're creative about how you implement it.
So, in order to do that, one of the other things that you mentioned, which aligns well, I'm not sure if you have read Reshuffle by Sangeet Paul Chowdhury. I also love his book. I had him on the podcast a couple of months back. You also focus effort on the fact that you can create new value inside the organization as a result of AI. And I want to think through this with you. How would therefore leaders of teams and organizations as they're thinking about strategy view it from that perspective rather than much of where the focus has been AI as a tool for efficiency, productivity, cost control? How would you approach it from a value generation perspective?
Think about how you can up level the human talent that you have. Yeah, a lot of things that AI does will be offload. So what you can do is rather than have your people doing the work, what you do is move to a phase where you have your people design the work, look at the workflows, figure out which of the tasks could be done by an agent, and is that agent in offload or elevate or extend mode? Where are robots in the equation if you have a physical element to the work, the products or services you deliver? And then to figure out and design that work, architect the work. And then you're still going to need humans in the loop. So you move your people up from doing the work to overseeing the work. The work is being done largely by machines, but now you can amplify their abilities and free them up to think more broadly. How do we create value in new ways? What new products could we build? How would we go to market in different ways? Are there different business models that we could create? How could we play a different game than our competitors? This is the opportunity, is to up level your people. And that means you have to invest in them, but you're freeing them up to do something more. I love the way that Jensen Huang thinks about it. He was interviewed, I can't remember which magazine interviewed him, but late 2024, he was asked, how do you think about the future of your employees at NVIDIA? And he said, we've got about 30,000 employees today, and I plan over time to grow that to about 50,000 employees, but supported by 100 million AI assistants across every group. So it's a different way about thinking about workforce planning. Now I'm expanding my organization as a combination of human talent and digital talent, AI talent. And the companies that figure out how to do that most elegantly and how to have their humans and machines work closely side by side are the ones that will win. And you already see that NVIDIA is well on the way to doing that.
That's such a powerful way of explaining it and visualizing it, Steve. I wonder sometimes when I have conversations with CEOs and executives, even in strategic planning, how far away are we from that? Sometimes people think of what you just mentioned. Yes, Jensen Huang is talking about that, but they visualize it as something in a far distant future. I circle back to the fact that you talk about this being like the Industrial Revolution, but a heck of a lot faster.
Yeah.
So how far away are we from the point where the most effective organizations across industries will need to be able to balance that human judgment, human creativity and intellect, along with this powerful access to all kinds of knowledge, information that AI has?
It's happening now. So in leading organizations, this work is going on now. Now, why isn't it more broad? One, I think the technology has not been ready for prime time. It's, you want to have, if you're going to hire somebody, you don't want to make mistakes 10% of the time, right? The same way you're not going to deploy an AI agent if it hallucinates and make mistakes 10 or 15 or 5% of the time. So one of the ways you get around that is you ground these agents in data. The reason they make stuff up and make mistakes is because they don't have the data they need to answer questions and to do the work that you want them to do. So organizing all of that data, grounding agents in an organization is a lot of effort. And the companies that are going through that work now, organizing their data, cleaning it up, making it accessible to the agents, they're the ones that are going to be successful. And you're going to see deployments this year in 2026. I think there's going to be an oh crap moment towards the end of this year. Every manager realizes, oh my God, this is changing everything. Why didn't we start the beginning of this year rather than now? So I think it's going to become more and more apparent through 2026. And one of the things that's enabling all of this, we're going to get into the weeds a little bit here, but it's important for every leader to understand this. There's a standard, a de facto standard, emerging standard called MCP. And MCP, it stands for Model Context Protocol. It doesn't matter what it stands for. think about it as like the USB of AI. So the same way that when USB came, it made it easier to plug things together, right? You could plug any keyboard into any PC. Before that, couldn't. They all had a custom standard. Printers were custom and scanners were some weird interface, right? Now they're all just USB. It makes it so much easier and you can build things much more easily. MCP is like a USB for connecting these agents into tools so they can do useful work, and also through APIs into business systems. So you can connect them into your CRM to get customer data. You can connect them into your product database. You can connect them into your customer support database, and so on. As you see this MCP marketplace mature, it's going to suddenly create this explosion of possibility. And that's the key enabler to make agents just explode.
And what a steep exponential curve that will be of change. Even as you were mentioning it, I could visualize how quickly everything would change as a result, Steve.
Yeah, it comes down to how quickly can your organization absorb that change, which is basic change management. It's just on steroids, because you're going to see 15 or 20 years of change crushed into the next 1 or 2 years.
Now, one of the things I wonder with all of this and the abundance of intelligence, what impact will this have on experience, Steve? One of the values that people typically bring to organizations is the experience they've had, however many years in a certain industry. What impact will this abundance of intelligence have on experience?
That's a great question. I think it actually diminishes it. Explain why. There's still a place for experience because there's some elements of human experience that we've not yet been able to capture in a way that an AI can understand. So it's not like it goes away. That said, one of the things that has been observed in early trials of pairing humans with AIs is that when you pair an AI with a more junior employee, you see a significant performance leap, like the collective performance leap. So in that example of customer support I mentioned before with the big enterprise software company, junior employees that were paired with this AI saw their performance, the number of tickets they could handle per hour, jump by 35%. The more experienced employees, it was significantly less than that, which is what you'd expect, right? Because if you've got someone that's super experienced, the benefit of being partnered with an AI it's not as much. So it can draw that gap down between your most junior employee and your most senior employee. There's still going to be a gap because there's that stuff that can't be captured by an AI. Being around the block a few times means you learn a lot of things, but it's certainly going to narrow the gap.
So then what becomes those differentiators or success factors, Steve, when AI becomes an equalizer? As you mentioned, there's still certain value to the experience, but
Yeah.
somewhat levels the playing field. What are the things that executives, professionals need in on that continue to be differentiators when experience and knowledge will not be?
The first thing I would say is everybody needs to double down on their AI acumen, right? Anybody listening to this podcast, here's my primary advice for you. Invest in yourself and boost your own AI acumen. Immerse yourself in the topic, learn as much as you can about it, and experience it, try it. Because the same way that if you think about people in your team, they're all different. And you have to learn how to speak to them to get the best results out of them. The same is true with AIs. You have to learn through experience how to get the best results out of them. And the only way you do that is by trying them. So try AI tools, get proficient with them, push their boundaries, learn how to get the most out of them. Yeah, there's been an adage in the industry for 2 or 3 years now. You're not going to lose your job to an AI. You're going to lose your job to somebody who knows how to use AI better than you. I'm old enough to remember having to learn how to use a computer. When I first went to an office at Intel, it was largely paper. And then PCs came and suddenly you did things in a different way. I had to learn Word Perfect and Lotus 1, 2, 3, if you're old enough to remember those. listener, your chuckle says that you do remember those. But then the Office suite, Google Workplace, right? You've had to learn how to use these tools. And if you don't have that ability, you're not as effective in the workplace. Being able to embrace these tools, learn how to use them is the first thing. If you're in a leadership position, I think what it means is a shift in your identity. We've all grown up into leadership positions over time, and we've become sages, right? We are known for what we know. We've been around the block a few times. We've had a lot of experience. We are sages in the world that we inhabit. In the world of AI, not only does AI now have a lot of knowledge, but we're moving into a very uncertain world, right? We're not sure, even as a futurist, I don't know for sure how this plays out over the next 5 to 10 years. We are in a world of uncertainty. So you have to shift your posture as a leader from one of being a sage that people respect because of all the things you know, to being a philosopher explorer, somebody who's thoughtful but bold about trying new things and leading people, even when you don't have the knowledge and the certainty of what you're leading them into. And that takes a different skill set and a different identity to do that.
It takes tremendous humility as
There
well
you go. Yep.
in being able to do that.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Steve. I was giving a similar example to my wife. It connected with her after the fact that her father was having certain issues with his MS, and they had visited a few different expert doctors. Through interactions with a couple of different AIs, they were able to find a lot better answers as a result. Part of the point being that, therefore, for many years, that expertise moving up into organization, experience in a field meant you had the answers, you were the source to the answers. That no longer can be the case. So it requires a very different approach to be of value, whether when you are a doctor or a leader of a team and organization.
Yeah, I love the thing you said there about getting more information. AI is very empowering, right? Empowers patients to take more control over their health. The time we get with doctors, because they're so busy, is so short. You can't remember what your conversation was and what they said, and it's a very tight interaction. So an AI that you can have a deep conversation with to empower you with the right questions to ask when you're with your doctor is important. I think it empowers students. It empowers shoppers to find products in different ways. It's just going to be a very empowering technology if used properly.
Now, one of the things you spent some time on is AlphaFold. Why do you believe that is an important example for us to understand in this change?
So let me explain briefly what AlphaFold is. It's been widely reported in the news, but anybody that doesn't understand what it is, it's an AI that was able to solve a 50-year grand challenge in science of understanding the structures of proteins. Proteins are the machines of biology. You have about 20,000 different proteins in your body, and they make your body work. So proteins carry oxygen through your blood, they make your muscles move, and so on. So the same way that if you look at a mechanical machine, if you can see the structure of the machine, you can figure out what it does. The same is true of a protein. So understand the structure of proteins, because they're built from strings of amino acids. And when you string them out flat and let them go, they go ping and form into these beautiful shapes. So what AlphaFold did was accurately predict the structure of all 200 million known proteins, because different organisms have different protein structures. It used to be that figuring out the structure of just one protein took between 1 and 5 years for a PhD qualified scientist. So accelerating that work dramatically, and DeepMind gave that information, the structures of all those 200 million known proteins, away for free. Now, why does that matter? Why does it matter to you, the listener today? It's because it's going to help maybe save your life. Understanding proteins is to understand disease. Very often when humans get a disease, it's because pathogens are attacking our proteins, or we have a genetic disorder that is disrupting our proteins, and that's causing the disease. Also, pathogens have proteins in them, so understanding the structure of the proteins in pathogens lets us figure out how to attack them. For example, the AIDS virus has a protein ring, and that's where it creates multiplies the virus. So proteins really matter. If you can understand proteins and how they interact, you understand disease, you understand cures and medicines. And so it is going to accelerate the work of creating new medicines over the next 10 to 20 years. And based on the number of listeners that you have, Mahan, I'm guessing that its AlphaFold will probably directly save the life of at least one of your listeners, because a drug will be co-created by an AI using this information that will save their life. So that's why it's a big deal.
It is significant, and part of what is happening is that level of intelligence is carrying across different industries, and there is a convergence of exponential technologies
Mm-hmm.
that will have significant implications on our lives. A lot of these are coming together, which will compound the change.
Yeah, think about AlphaFold as the first of many parts of science where AI is going to help us solve those areas. And we are probably 1 or 2 years away from having an AI that can help us solve all of the open mathematical challenges that are still out there and unsolved. Maths is the foundation of physics, so that may help us then, it's like a domino effect. That may then help us unlock more of the open questions in the world of physics. It's going to help us model molecular biology and more molecular chemistry. It may help us solve fusion energy. It may help us find breakthroughs in engineering. Certainly, I think we'll see breakthroughs in material science. There's a lot of AI effort being focused there by Microsoft and Google. So one of the things I tell my audience is I do keynote talks around the world. One of the things I open in my keynotes is I tell people we are likely to see more technologically driven change in the next 5 years than the last 50. And 50 years ago, Jaws and the Towering Inferno were in the movie theaters. A lot has happened since then. Think about all of the technological change we've been through in the last 50 years compressed into the next 5, and that's what we're coming up against. And it's great.
I want to touch on the three intelligences that you talked about: human intelligence, artificial intelligence, and then robotic or physical intelligence. Would love for you to talk us through how in leadership we will need to be able to orchestrate these three intelligences as we guide our organizations into the future.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it means you have to understand the capabilities of each of those. Hopefully, you understand what capabilities of your people are already. So now you have to understand what are the capabilities of AI agents and what are the emerging capabilities of robots. If you haven't kept up with the speed that humanoid robotics has advanced, it is breathtaking. In just the last 3 years, you've seen the leading company emerge, which I think is Figure. They've gone from, okay, we've built a robot that can stand up, which is actually quite difficult to do, to we've built a robot that can now unpack groceries on command, hand them to other robots, and put them away correctly in the kitchen, and then load the dishwasher. We're not there yet for a truly generalized adaptable robot. There's still some big problems to be solved. But the progress has been phenomenal. As a leader, you have to understand where are we on that curve. And these robots, by the way, they're targeted for release at around $30,000. If you do the maths for that, means they're going to work for about 68 cents an hour. So it's quite appealing. And by the way, they don't complain or get sick. They might need a bit of WD-40 now, once in an hour. Then they have a different set of characteristics than humans. And they can do the dull, dirty, repetitive jobs that humans don't want to do. And in an aging society like ours, there are not enough young people who are interested in doing physical labor. The average age of the construction worker creeps up every year, right? So we're going to need help from physical robotics to complement human physical labor. So as a leader, you have to understand what are the strengths and weaknesses of these three components: humans, AI agents, digital employees, essentially, and then robotic employees. Where should I use them? And then how do I build systems where they can work together, where they can gracefully hand off? So it's thinking about the interfaces between them. When the human has finished their part of the task, and they need to hand it off to an agent, what does that handoff look like? What's the interface? What's the trigger that starts there? And then when the AI agent is finished with what they're doing, handing it back to the human, what does that handoff look like? What's that interface look like? It's hard work, but you have to do it. And here's why you have to do it. You have to do it, one, because it will make you more efficient. It'll elevate your performance. It'll help you create new value in new ways. All that's great. But here's the other thing you need to know. We could see a very quick path to AGI, human level intelligence, artificial general intelligence. If that happens, and you've done all of the hard work of integrating AI into all the places through your workflows in your business, what you're essentially doing is turning the dial on the intelligence of all your digital and robotic employees up to 11. And yes, that was a Spinal Tap reference. So you get the benefit of AGI in a way, because you've already woven this throughout the fabric of your company, you instantly get that benefit as these AIs get more and more intelligent. And so that's the reason, the urgency to get that work done, so that whenever that happens, and it could happen a year from now because of a thing called fast takeoff, when that happens, your organization will get the full benefit of that. If you're still in deployment mode with agents, you won't.
What a beautiful analogy and way to describe it. So a couple of thoughts and a question. One fun thought as an aside, Gary Rich, who was a CEO of WD-40 for many years, would appreciate your shout out to WD-40 that they will continue doing well as we have more robots in the workplace. But
It's
on
the
a
ultimate wonder
serious,
material. Yeah.
yeah, it is. And it's incredible how they continue to grow the company. Now, the other thing, though, on the serious note, Steve, is that I know, first of all, the listeners to the podcast, they have a growth mindset. That's why they listen to the podcast. And many of the CEOs and executives I interact with also are into learning, into growth, into reading. That said, I don't think there's a week that goes by that I don't hear from at least a few CEOs and don't get half a dozen emails where people say, I am overwhelmed with what I have in front of me, leading the human intelligence through change, through uncertainty, through disruption. Steve is telling me I need to understand artificial intelligence better to lead that, robotic intelligence, and then be
Yeah.
able to marry all of these. How am I supposed to do that, Steve?
You don't have to be an AI expert, but you need to know enough to make informed decisions. And that's exactly why I wrote the book. You need to understand the lingo a little bit, the terms of art, but you also need to understand the potential and the urgency of adopting this stuff, because the risk is, okay, you decide, I'm too old and I'm just going to sit this out. I'm 2 or 3 years from retirement. I'm just going to sit on my hands and watch this one go by. You're going to destroy the value of your company if you do that, because there'll be another company that you compete with that does step up, and they will change the game on you, and you will not be able to catch up. You will never be able to compete, and you will be known as the people that destroyed your company. I hate to put it in such stark terms, but that's potentially the reality here. So that's why I wrote the book, to help people through this time. I spend my time immersed in AI white papers and understanding all the nuts and bolts of this so that you don't have to. And then I try to turn that into a book that anybody can read. It's not, you don't have to be technical in any way to read the book, but learn enough so that you're empowered to thrive in this new era.
It's critical in that this is a huge transformation. We're going through it really fast. I've, over the past month, heard from a CEO of a financial institution and the managing partner of a law firm who've said, I am glad I'm going to be retiring in 5-6 years so I don't have to deal with this.
Yep, I
And
hear it all the
part of
time.
my point is, no, you are going to deal with it during these 5-6 years. And besides that, the last thing you want to do is transition a non-existent organization, because this is coming at us really fast. One other point I would mention is that in some instances, CEOs and executives have over relied on their IT staff or people that they deem as the experts in AI. They might be, However, they are not the experts in the business and how to capture value in the business. And this requires an understanding of value, not just understanding of the technology.
Exactly. And IT is presided over making sure that a set of tools is available to people and that they're maintained and you get the latest revs and that that the uptime is good, right? That's what IT is there to do, whether that's an email tool or a CRM or whatever. What's changing is that technology is graduating. It's no longer a tool. If you think about AI as a tool, then you've missed the point. There are tools that are now being turbocharged with AI, but you should think about AI, these agents, as digital employees. That means you have to think about them completely differently. They're not a tool. It's about workforce planning is different. One of the things I wrote about in the book is that Moderna was actually the first company to recognize that the IT department and the HR department are colliding. And they were the first company to hire a unified CIO and CHRO. They're the same person at Moderna because they're presiding over a blended workforce of machines and humans working together. You have to have that mindset if you're going to be successful in 2026 and 2027.
It is a very different mindset. Now, with respect to AI, there are a lot of ethical risks and concerns as well, Steve, within organizations or on the societal front. What do you see as ethical risks and considerations we need to keep in mind as we help guide our organizations and take advantage of the opportunities that technology provides?
Yes, let's walk through them one by one. Bias is the first one to challenge. AIs are trained on data, and data ultimately comes from human activity. It captures human activities. And so it reflects human activity and human biases. And the same way that we want our children to grow up to be better than us, we should want our AIs to be better than us, to not carry the human biases forward. So that means being very thoughtful when you're training models on your proprietary internal in-house data to make sure that you think carefully about that. Amazon got caught when they built an AI to triage incoming resumes, and they found that the resume AI was biased against women. It's not that the AI was bad, it's just that it reflected historical hiring practices at Amazon. So AIs can be like holding a mirror up to yourself. They reflect human behavior. And Amazon, of course, had to scrap that AI and then have a big internal conversation about why have we historically been biased against women. So that's the first thing, is to make sure you scrub your data and that you eliminate bias. And there's lots of different types of bias you have to watch for. They're all things I talk about in the book. The next thing is you need to make sure that you are deploying AI responsibly. Are you using it in a way that helps to improve life for humans? And part of that is it safe? Is it safe to use? We need to be spending a lot of time making sure that the deployments of AIs are safe to use. And there's a whole argument we can have about, are the AI labs doing enough today? Some are not, in my view, but safety is a big one. And then malicious users. AI is an amplifier, and we've talked about that quite a bit. It amplifies good people so they can do more good things. Unfortunately, it also amplifies the bad people. And so malicious use, using AI to do bad things at scale, that's a concern. So figuring out how do you keep these models, these powerful models, out of the hands of people who would do bad things with them, make sure that they don't give you instructions on how to build a nuclear bomb, for example. So there's lots of layers of effort that you have to do to make sure that you are thinking through things. And that's why I talk about moving from a sage earlier to a philosopher explorer. You now have to put your philosopher's hat on as a leader and ask those questions. Is what we're doing responsible? Should we be using AI to surveil our customers, for example? Probably no. Now, if you ask their permission and you give them a quid pro quo and say, hey, if you allow our AI to watch you, we can do all these amazing things for you, and they opt in, then great. But these are the sorts of conversations that as a leader, you need to step up and drive within your organizations.
The judgment and the ethics stay with the humans because at the end of the day, the accountability stays with the humans. So it's important to have those conversations. Now, we as leaders need to approach leadership differently, Steve. You mentioned your dad was the president of the university. Our education system, for at least a few hundred years, has followed very much the same approach. There
Yeah.
are nuances and differences. I wonder, how do you see education being impacted by this?
Yeah, I've written a lot about this. If you go to my blog at stevebrown.ai, I've written a few blogs on the future of education. I work with colleges and universities on this topic. AI will inevitably change education, both in the curriculum, we need to learn different skills to complement what AI will do for us, but also I think the pedagogy, the way that we are taught will change. To your point, it's been the same, a teacher at the front of the room and desks lined up for 250 years. And the educational system was designed to help people move out of the fields into factories and offices. And we haven't changed it in 250 years, really. It's gone from a blackboard with chalk to maybe a computer screen and a laptop, but that's it. I think there's a potential for AI to be a great tutor. People are already using AI to help them learn things. You now have a device in your pocket that will help you learn anything about anything. But I think there's a lot to be said for going to school, the collaboration of learning with people of your similar age or outlook, and then the relationship between the teacher and the student. You probably can think of a teacher that had a profound impact in your life, right? Your favorite teachers. For me, it was John Fernandez, who taught me mathematics, right? Still remember his face. I can remember his voice because it was such a profound, impactful relationship. So there's a place for that. So we have to find out, how do we use AI to complement what human teachers do, to act as teaching assistants, to enable students to, as well as being instructed by a human, learn at their own pace from an AI that's complementary to that, but use AI to wrap around that the student-teacher relationship and increase the quality of that relationship. I think that's the opportunity. Part of your question was, how do I see that playing out? I'm not sure that today's educational establishments have it in them to make the changes that are necessary. There's too much, it's innovator's dilemma. There's too much momentum, and I don't want to be unkind, but there's a lot of self-importance in academia, unfortunately. And I think even people that are in academia will tell you that. So it could come disruptively from the outside. I think you could imagine Microsoft University, Google Academy, Amazon School using AI to create some kind of educational service, which is as good as, better than, but at a fraction of the cost of today's education, that has some kind of social in-person component to it, but that uses AI extensively, that completely disrupts the existing model. And it would be sad if university campuses become the abandoned shopping malls of the 2030s.
It will be extremely hard because there are many layers to the universities that
Mm,
resist change. It has
yeah.
benefited them for quite a long time. But I do believe there is tremendous potential tapping into what you mentioned there, Steve, where there is a value in the humanity and that human connection, whether it is to the
Mm,
teacher or to the other students. For a whole host of reasons in education, as well as even in organizations, we haven't focused on that. In organizations, we've had job descriptions that have taken out the humanity and made people work like robots. In education, the same thing. Made the individuals like little LLMs sit in front of us and memorize what we are giving them.
yeah.
So rethinking this approach and doubling up on that human connection, I think, will be the way to go. We'll see if universities can do that or not.
The thing I learned most in university, I learned how to program computers and design chips and so on. But the thing I most learned was to be a DJ, to interact with other people, to be social, to connect with people, to have conversations, to be curious about the world. Those are the things I learned. And they're the things, if I look at what I do now, I speak for a living. That's where I learned it. I learned it being a DJ and putting on bands and all the parts of the social side of university that are nothing to do with the academic side.
Absolutely. Now, for the audience to find out more both about your book, follow your writing and your work, where would you send them to, Steve?
My website is stevebrown.ai, pretty easy. You can email me directly, sb@stevebrown.ai. You can find me on LinkedIn. I post regularly on LinkedIn. Steve Brown AI Futurist is the easy way to find me. And I'm on YouTube occasionally as well. You'll see some of my talks up there. There are lots of Steve Browns in the world. I have a very common name. So if you go on YouTube, search for Steve Brown AI Futurist and it'll all pop up. And then check out my book. I wrote it for the people who are listening to this podcast. So it's designed for you. I hope you will enjoy it. I tried to make it a fun read as well as being informative. So I hope you will enjoy it.
I really appreciate the conversation on your outstanding book, Steve, The AI Ultimatum, Preparing for a World of Intelligent Machines and
Right.
Radical Transformation. Thank you so much for the conversation, Steve Brown.
It was a real pleasure. Thanks. Nice talking to you, Mahan. I really enjoyed it.